Well, I really want to see the current exhibition. I mean, it looks fantastic. Yeah. Oh, it's me talking. Oh, okay. Yeah, we definitely need to get some shots. Yeah. Welcome to the World City Festival. I'm delighted to be here at Duddles in Hong Kong today, where we will be talking about the value of art and how it enhances Hong Kong and our global cities. My name is Rosanna Harries. I'm on the working group of Art Power Hong Kong, a community-driven organization to unite the arts in Hong Kong through the challenges of 2020, and also the director, head of Sinclair Arts. I'm delighted to welcome your speakers for today, Dr. Maria Mock, the Museum Director of the Hong Kong Museum of Art. Alan Lowe, who is a prolific board member in Hong Kong, sitting on a lot of councils for the design and cultural sector in Hong Kong, including Parasite, one of Hong Kong's leading contemporary art centers, the Design Trust, as well as Art Basel in Hong Kong's Patrons Council and the Tate Asia Pacific Acquisition Council. And Dr. Henrietta Tsoi Leong, founder of Gallery Aura Aura and co-founder of the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association, as well as one of Hong Kong's leading female entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us all today. The first question I want to ask you all, when we're talking about how the arts enhances a city, is why is the arts important? And specifically, why is the arts important in 2020 when globally we're facing so many issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic? So, Henrietta, should we start with you? Why do you think the arts are important?
Sure. Personally, I love listening to stories. I tell stories and I listen to stories and I read stories. I think art is really important because artists are one of the best storytellers in the world. So in this particular moment, still deep in the pandemic, I think art is of utmost importance because it will help all of us in our own ways I guess, to understand each other's stories and to be relatable to each other.
Thank you. And Alan, what about you?
Well, art is such an important part of the city. Culturally, it's kind of that wider, bigger conversation across so many different disciplines and sort of how, in a way, how people relate to each other. I suppose it also brings about through art conversation it also kind of brings about kind of the sanity or insanity of the situation. It's sort of like an expression of the state of being. So I think it's in particular during difficult times, especially in our city over the last 16 months, political followed by the pandemic. I mean, it's ever so important.
And I think art helps people process their life experiences, especially the most dramatic ones. The pain and the joy and maybe the relief. So it's particularly important at this time of the pandemic, not just for the creator, like the artists themselves, through art making, then they're able to relate to the challenges that they're facing, but they're also sharing the strength and the courage with other people, with the viewers who could sort of borrow that strength and creativity and imagination to do some sort of self-healing. We always talk about how therapeutic is art at this time.
Okay, so in terms of art being a mirror for society and an outlet for expression, and obviously that being increasingly important in times of stress, where do we see the arts in Hong Kong? I think art has a lot of manifestations in the way it presents itself in Hong Kong. And I want to see a little bit about your views in terms of how that ecosystem has developed in Hong Kong. So again, I want to start with Henrietta, going back to you in terms of How has the gallery sector kind of guided the development of the arts ecosystem in Hong Kong?
I think for the gallery side, we have a very short history. The total history, number of years that contemporary galleries actually existed in Hong Kong would have been maybe fewer than 30, 40 years. And of which on the first 20 years, there were maybe 2 handful of galleries, that's it. For the time that I have been in this sector, that has been about 15, 16 years, I think it's the best time that Hong Kong people have experienced. Given that my aspiration was to be an artist and I failed to become one, I strive to work towards having a career that's closest to artists, and galleries take a very important role in the primary development of the careers of artists. So being a local Hong Kong gallerist, we feel that this mission to promote and to bring up Hong Kong artists is key. Hong Kong has all of the infrastructure that's needed. Of course, there can always be more, but compared to when I grew up, when there was nothing, and it was basically impossible. So I encourage artists and young people to be brave and courageous, given the pandemic has really bring forth a lot of different thoughts to us, to be braver and just to do whatever they want with in creation.
Well, you've mentioned the exponential growth really in the commercial sector in Hong Kong. How about from the institutional side? How do you feel that museums have developed that framework within Hong Kong?
I think the museum have changed a lot. We are the earliest public art museum in Hong Kong, established since 1962. But I think I see huge growth since the past decade. And of course, we are the custodian of the collection, and we are the nurturer of artistic talent. But like Henrietta says, only the sky is the limit. When I was a student, I used to see only exhibitions within an enclosed space, the museum gallery, even behind glass vitrines or display cases. But now, it's just there's so much expansion. We are often using different spaces in and out of the museum. We are engaged in very different partnership, working with the private sectors, NGOs, art groups, to try to create also a museum without walls, I would say.
Very interesting that you mentioned that museum without walls. I think now it's more important than ever with the digital transformation that's happening and taken on an additional speed this year as everything goes virtual. You also mentioned working with NGOs and the public sector and the private sector together. So, Alan, what do you think is the importance of that dynamic? You sit on a lot of boards and advisory committees. How do you feel that plays a role in also driving the arts ecosystem in the city?
Well, I mean, that's the only way for the Hong Kong scene to grow. And obviously with, you have the fair and the gallery space that's obviously has seen a lot of growth in the last 10 years. In terms of the nonprofit side of things, obviously, yes, we have. I mean, I sit on the board of Parasite, and together with AAA, the museum, and obviously M+ opening next year. I mean, obviously that's going to see some growth, but we continue to want to see more efforts from patrons, from collectors. I think I'd like to be able to see a few more private museums, foundations. I mean, it's still early days. I mean, it's been I guess 10+ years since we've had this sort of like revival in Hong Kong. So I think it's early days. I mean, I think the next 10-15 years will be super interesting for Hong Kong.
And what do you think is the key trigger? You sort of say 10 years ago that there's been a changing point. What would you pin that to?
I guess strangely, it started with the commercial art fair. I think it was Art Hong Kong back in 2007, I think, that started the whole thing, and then that eventually morphed into Art Basel, and then with in 2011, 2012, that first wave of international dealers, galleries coming into town, and also I think Hong Kong's representation in Venice Biennial back in 2013. I think today, you think about Hong Kong artists today versus 10 years ago, I mean, it's a completely world of difference. I mean, we're getting so much more attention today. Yeah.
You work with a lot of Hong Kong contemporary artists as well, don't you, at the museum? What are you doing to engage future audiences for your museum?
We're using a lot of actually, especially during the last several months, social media platform. Trying to engage them to not only come and look at the artwork, but also talk about it, have their own expressions. And I might be able to call it a visual engagement, because people are just using the iPhone to capture whatever they see, and then they turn it into their own little stories. And I think that's when it makes it interesting, when people begin to personalize the experience. So it's not just an artwork that's just sitting there. And I mean, in the olden times, people just read the caption, whether they understand it or not. It's
a new level of consumption.
It is.
Cultural consumption.
Yes, exactly.
Far more discussion around it.
Far more
with
discussion
social media,
around
you can't
it. Yeah.
hide from it, really.
We now spend a lot of time doing our IG post, and I'm engaging a lot of young colleagues. The other day, somebody asked me, "Oh, so who is your IG team?" I said, "Everybody is on my IG team." What are you talking about? And also we're engaging a lot of commissioning on site, because now we have a new museum. We've been closed for 4 years, but working on it for 3 years. And we reopened last November. And after we reopen, we have a lot more interesting space within the museum and in the surrounding area. People absolutely love those artworks.
Beautiful.
And, they just come, post it on the Instagram, talk about it, and say, wow, it's wonderful. I mean, the museum stands out because of these artworks, these commissioned. Yeah.
So that dynamic between Hong Kong's cultural history and ongoing interpretations of that is something that's very important from your curatorial perspective.
Definitely. We want to bring out a Hong Kong viewpoint to interpret this legacy. In the museum collection, we have 4 core collections, 4 core pillars. We have a lot of traditional artwork. Actually, we have Chinese painting and calligraphy. We have Chinese antiquities. We have China trade. That's 18th, 19th century South China art. But of course, we also have modern Hong Kong art. And so we're very Hong Kong if you look at what we collect. But at the same time, we have to kind of maintain that Hong Kongness by providing a twist, a Hong Kong twist to that well of contrast. And I think it's not just through commissioning local artists, but also through how we curate and our tone of voice, how we talk about these art stories that involve not just Hong Kong artists, but also Hong Kong collectors and Hong Kong curators.
So we talked about a lot about Hong Kong artists and Hong Kong audiences, but obviously from the perspective of the artists, from the galleries, from the art fairs, and from the international standing of the museums, we want to also talk to visitors, maybe not right now, unfortunately, but in the future, visitors to Hong Kong are making destinations out of our museums and our galleries, and we've got the much-awaited Contemporary Art Museum M+ opening in 2021. What are your thoughts, Alan, on how we continue to drive Hong Kong as a destination and enhance the city's appeal as a place for the arts?
I guess more and more when you look at Hong Kong, you also have to look at kind of the entire region. So we are part of the Greater Bay Area. So that kind of takes you from a 7 million audience base to like 80 to 100 millions within this two-hour travel circle. So that opens up a lot more possibilities. Obviously, Hong Kong has developed itself to become the hub, the international hub in all of Asia. I tend to think that Hong Kong is there seems to be the right thing happening here in terms of really kind of sets the scene for a dialogue with the rest of the global community.
I think in terms of what Hong Kong has to offer in terms of culture, it's manifold. First of all, yes, we actually welcome international influences and value the freedom of expression. But if you look at me as a person whom has vast growth in the past decade due to this, then you can see that the importance of Hong Kong and people working here is to understand that we have our own culture to propagate. We are one of the top cities in the world to have been modernizing ink since the 1950s. And because of that, we have a lot of material which is already here, archived in the museums and in other different libraries. With that, we grow and we are able to absorb what is great and specialized in the world, and then we make it turn it into our own.
Yeah, and Hong Kong's makeup is very international and cosmopolitan. And I know that you sit on some boards that look at how tourism is promoted into Hong Kong. How do you think the arts fits into that conversation?
Hong Kong certainly has benefited so much from sort of that inbound interest from the rest of the world, thanks to Art Basel and sort of all the sort of collateral events that happen around it. Putting something on the global cultural calendar is for sure a really big deal for the city and for the region.
Years ago, we had to fly all over the world to meet these experts. And now, like, if you miss an event internationally, don't worry. They would likely come to Hong Kong when this all these major art week happen. And of course, we love to see this happen continuously. But that comes down to how efficient Hong Kong continue to be, infrastructure-wise, and how welcoming we are in terms of our tax structure. There must be policies that have to be improved and made to encourage international artists to come on board, and so that we can be really comparable vis-a-vis New York or Tokyo, right? Or even Beijing. So it's something that is a competitive advantage to us, but we really need to work hard to keep it.
So I do want to talk about public art and what role public arts has in enhancing a city's value and taking art outside of museum walls onto the streets.
As a Hong Kong citizen, we definitely want to see much more public art to be shown in Hong Kong. We have to understand Hong Kong is a very, very expensive city, and each square centimeter of land, it's very, very sought after. I think interdisciplinary art and new media art would be something that Hong Kong can look into and do more. We have so many glass buildings. If we can light up all the glass buildings, not just one or two, but all of these buildings across, and forget about those shiny bubbles and light bulbs over Christmas. And
there are a lot of light bulbs over Christmas.
From the 80s.
Yeah, from the 80s. Just invite more artists from the region, from Hong Kong, but then to support them with the technology and the equipment they need, and just shooting up all the glass, light up all the glass windows, and make something, be creative about it.
Well, that's something to be excited about for M+, because I think the whole facade is going to be used as a digital art installation, which I, for one, can't wait for. Very excited for that. In a dream world, one thing that you think would, regardless of budget, that would change and really be a positive influence on promoting the facilitation of arts and culture in Hong Kong and participation in the arts in Hong Kong? Question for all of you. Maria, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. I think if people could start to not see art as something that's from the elite circle. And to be able to connect art with their everyday life, that would really be a huge change. And I think it would also contribute to the sustainability that we are all fighting for. I mean, from the institution point of view, this is something that we can work harder on. We were talking about how we want to promote the museum and promote our collection through social media, but that's just the first step. What needs to be done after that is really to deepen that understanding of art. Otherwise, it just stays on the level of selfie and Instagrammable images, and that's not enough. That won't turn an art lover into someone who begins to collect.
What about you, Alan? What would be your dream?
Well, you think about Hong Kong, even though it's a relatively small city in terms of the footprint. I think there's a lot of culture is very concentrated on Hong Kong Island and Kowloon. And we think about the whole population, almost 8 million people. The vast majority actually live in the new territories. Mm-hmm. So how do you instead of doing something, so far away from the mass, what about bringing West Kowloon to them, Mm-hmm. So we've always had this idea that, what if someone actually managed to create an art farm in the new territories, create studio spaces for residencies and to be able to do very kind of more ambitious, whether it's indoor, whether it's outdoor, projects, special commissions. And obviously, being, someone from the food world, we think about, how about an organic market on the weekend?
Yeah. Where?
Yeah. Let's see if we find land.
Yeah, that's the endless question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, and what about you, Henrietta?
A dream is to see the major collaborations amongst all these different elements of the ecosystem happening. For example, when the museum is about to plan a show in 2 or 3 years later, that galleries can be advised so that they can develop their program echoing or criticizing or critiquing or supplementing what is about to show in the museum, and which is collectible. Maybe a loosely organized organization that has functional responsibilities that link each other. And so that Hong Kong has a real strategy, whether it is public art or gallery development or collector wanting new and more vibrant art, there could possibly be a lot more jamming happening, and not to be afraid of the being, stigmatized into certain things. That would be my dream.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Hong Kong and arts here. We're obviously having this discussion within the context of the World City Festival and what the role of art in cities for the future around the world. What do you think, from a sort of top level, policy level, is the value and the role of art within an ideal city? And how do you connect the arts to people's daily lives and daily existence effectively? Maria, I'm going to pass that one to you first.
Such a deep one. Thank you. I think it's going to be important for art to become something that's both physically accessible, but also mentally accommodating for people to be able to sort of resort to art when they feel that they need inspiration, when they feel that they need support. So it's just not looking about art, but also thinking in terms of it. But then the city would have to be very much welcoming in a sense. Not just artists would feel that they have the freedom to create. Curators would have the resources to interpret art and create art programs, and we talk about art spaces. Those art spaces would be readily available, and we would sort of be immersed. The experience will be immersive, and we'll be having this discussion about how to make it more accessible.
Get beyond that. Well, digitalization has certainly done a lot to democratize the arts already, but diversity and inclusion remains a very big topic. Alan, how do you think we look at arts for future cities?
I guess I'm also thinking about the physical, like the value of physical spaces in the future. Before 2020, we used to travel around the world to see exhibitions, to go to auction, to do a lot of art collection visits, to do all that. And in light of this situation, with the new normal, with smart cities, with that progression, what is that next 10, 20 years going to look like? What is the new value of a physical museum? What is the new value of a gallery, or how or a nonprofit, and how this new dynamic works with the rest of the city, and also with the network of major cities around the world. So I think that it's not so much here's the answer, but it's like here's an even bigger question for you.
If only we could come up with the answer. I guess that's moving into Henrietta's virtual 10-story museum for ink art.
Definitely. That's a dream, right? Isn't it? I think ideal city would allow people from all sorts of life to express themselves through serious art, like using art as an expression. And as Maria discussed, like maybe we can touch and feel art anywhere we go. Like artists should be readily available around us at, in terms of all kinds of art, performing art, visual art, music, etc., at very affordable prices. In terms of ideal, I still personally think that art is something that we want to sense and touch and immerse in. So I do see a high value in having space, physical space. So it is an investment of a city, of a world city, to provide space, whether it's a farmland, inside, build an island in the ocean, or open up the museum grounds for all. That is already quite idealistic.
And what do you think the role of VR and AI and all the other acronyms that go within that conversation? What's the role of those virtual realities in that conversation?
Oh, they definitely should not replace the real thing. That's for sure. Because I echo Henrietta's viewpoint. I mean, you really have to show the artwork and let people enjoy it rather than just clicking something and think that they have seen it all. That's, I think, it's the real challenge for us people who provide art programs. Because yes, you have to deal with the inconvenience of lockdowns and people's restricted social distancing and all that. But if they don't see the beauty of the actual display, then I think we've lost the battle.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. And I think all of us will agree have come away with a lot to think about.